Welcome, everybody, to the Steve Davis Show. I'm Scott Galletti, filling in once again for Steve Davis. He'll be back here in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, we're going to talk New Mexico Highlands athletics, and in particular, the cross-country team, and also we'll get into the track and field team because our guest right now, the head coach, longtime head coach at New Mexico Highlands and former runner at New Mexico Highlands, Bob DeVries, is our guest. And Coach, first off, welcome to the Steve Davis Show, and thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
Well, let's talk about your journey. It all started where it is right now at New Mexico Highlands. So talk about just the venture, 35 plus years coaching, but you were an athlete before a coach. How did it all start?
It's kind of a long story, so I won't bore you with that. But I
You got 30
basically
minutes.
well, I actually drove. I was going to be a student athlete. I thought I was going to be a student athlete at the University of Arizona. But I went to Arizona from Wisconsin, and I had to drive past Las Vegas, and in the job I had to go back and forth a couple of times. I worked for a dairy farm, and I realized I wasn't good enough to be a D1 athlete. And I saw a sign one day that said New Mexico Highlands University, and I got off the highway. I drove around the campus, and I said, I like it here. I wrote a letter to the coach, and eventually I ended up getting a scholarship to run at New Mexico Highlands University. Ran here, served as an assistant coach for 2 years. At the end of my career, went off and coached high school for 10 years and found my way back to Las Vegas and Highlands, and I've been here since then, 35
What
years.
was what was it about New Mexico Highlands back then? Because obviously facilities have gotten better, everything's gotten better over the course of time. But what was it that you liked particularly out of Las Vegas and the university at that time?
I love the setting. I love the mountains. The fact that it was a small town.
Mm-hmm.
I also went home and did a little bit of research. This is, of course, pre-internet. So I actually went into the University of Arizona library and found some materials from the NAIA Nationals, and I saw that the team had two really good runners, but didn't have very much depth. And I was never a front runner. I was a middle of the pack guy, and I thought this is a team where I could probably make the top five or top seven and have a little impact. And I wanted to be in a smaller place. I wanted some place that had seasons. I had been in Arizona for a year, and I truly hated it. I hated getting up at 5 in the morning to run just to avoid 100 degrees. And so I wanted a place where I could go and fish and run and be in a smaller environment.
Mm-hmm.
And I've stayed in New Mexico pretty much ever since.
So one of the things that we didn't talk about, high school. Where did you go to high school?
I graduated high school from a school that no longer exists, Central High School outside in southeastern Wisconsin, about 15 miles, 20 miles west of Kenosha,
Hmm.
down in
Okay.
the corner. I like to tell people I still hold the Central High School record for the mile. And
Nice.
but the only reason I hold it is because shortly after I graduated, the school went out of business. Uh, and so, and I never
Well,
knew.
there's a reason for everything, Coach.
Yeah, so I never knew that I had that record really. I mean, I knew I'd run probably faster than anybody, but my sister, this was I don't know, this was decades later. She said, she messaged me when, I was at the school because they consolidated the high school. They
Mm-hmm.
brought like three high schools in to make a bigger high school. And she said, I looked down in the trophy case, and there were the school records for Central High School, and your name is still there.
Nice.
So,
That's good to know. So
so
you only
yeah.
went to one high school then, correct?
Yeah, I went to one high school,
Okay.
Central High School in Salem Central, Wisconsin. Yeah.
So I'm sure you said that you came to Las Vegas looking to fish. I'm sure there was lots of fishing out there, huh?
Yeah, in Wisconsin, I was a lake guy. I fished a lot of lakes. There was lakes everywhere. And so when I came to New Mexico, I was converted to a stream fisherman. A friend of mine, who I became friends with in college, Danny Roper, taught me how to stream fish, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
So you get to New Mexico Highlands as an athlete. So talk about the student athlete part and what did you major while you were at New Mexico Highlands, and talk about your journey as a runner at
Yeah,
New Mexico
so
Highlands.
my running career in college, I will say this was pretty uneventful. I was
Hmm.
I was a very much a middle of the pack guy. I worked hard. I wasn't that talented. My PR was nothing great, um, and but I knew a lot about running because I had been since my high school days. Uh, I've been really researching running, and so the coaches that I went through a series of three different coaches in my years there. There was some turnover, and none of them were really knowledgeable guys about running. And I was able to kind of influence the training and do that sort of stuff and sort of be um, an assistant coach without really being an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really, I think, the value that I added to the New Mexico Highlands program as an athlete. I was more of a, hey, we should be doing this kind of stuff. And we got better. We did get better. But I was never a great runner. I majored in journalism and history. I became a teacher. I became a history teacher for a number of years. Um, and that's another thing I appreciated about Las Vegas. You know, uh, it's historic, and a lot of the young people I recruit, I know that they look at Las Vegas and they say it's old, but I prefer the term historic.
He's Bob DeVries, the head coach for both the cross country teams and the track and field teams at New Mexico Highlands. And we will come back with more on the Steve Davis Show in just a moment.
Here's True. Hands it off the other way this time. And he breaks out through the hole. It's a touchdown, Monarchs. That was Broden Price on his first touch of the day.
Moorhead split out wide to Evans' right. Evans looks left to throw. And that one's going to be caught. Brody Cochran from 27 yards out for the score.
He'll give on the ground to Nelson, who's got a lot of space. There goes Nelson for his 12th touchdown of the season. Second of the game. It's a 34-yard scamper. He'll give back to Landeros. Look at him make the first level miss. Landeros off to the races again. See you later. 69 yards on the ground for Alberto Landeros. Had some ball security issues during warm-ups. I was watching warm-ups today. Gallegos going for the home run. He has Smith, and it is caught. Jevin Smith on a touchdown.
Again, drops back to pass. Gonzalez scrambles out, gets out of the pocket, trying to stay behind the line, lobs it back across his body. Oh, great catch. And he's in for the touchdown.
Ray Coronado will kick it away for the Matadors from his own 40. Moorhead's going to get a chance at this one. He fields it at the 2. Moorhead on a full head of steam. He's got some speed across the 40. Makes the guy miss. Moorhead on his feet. And Moorhead is going to be in for 6. 98-yard kick return for Jahari Moorhead.
Here's two, catching the high, snapping, almost picked off. It is the other way. That's Landon Haig. Touchdown Chargers. Landon Haig, so athletic off the back foot. Red.
Out of their pocket. See if the run game.
Martin under center. He'll give to Landeros. Landeros has some room. Can he outrun everybody? Yes, sir. Have yourself a night. Landeros is in for the 80-yard Bulldogs touchdown.
Lewis on the final play of the first half. He's going to scramble left. Lewis unloads, and it's caught! Touchdown! Touchdown complete to Carter Strauss to end the half.
And we are back here on the Steve Davis Show. I'm Scott Coletti, filling in for Steve Davis. All Niawani, our producer-director. Glad to have you along, and also along for the ride, head track and field coach, and currently in the cross-country season, head cross-country coach at Mexico Highlands, Bob DeVries. And, Coach, we talked about your background. Let's talk about how you got into coaching after you were an athlete. Was coaching something that you wanted to do? Is it kind of something while you were a student athlete, both in high school and at the college level, that you kind of developed a love for?
I basically knew I was going to be a coach from a very early age. In high school, we had a pretty bad track team. We had a good cross-country team, but our track coaches were football guys, and they didn't really, for distance runners, they were basically, go out and run 3 miles and we'll see you in a half an hour. That was, And so at that time, there was this new magazine that was coming out. It was called Runner's World. And they used to publish, unlike they do today, today it's a lot about other stuff than running. But back then, they actually focused a lot on training. And a fellow that I knew that ran in college would send me, and people might not remember mimeographs where you had to roll the thing.
Right.
He would
I remember.
He would send them to his brother from college, and they would come to me stapled together, and he would tell me, you should read these. And so I did. So one day I went to my track coach and I said, there's a lot of research and we should be doing some of these things. And I just was trying to make some suggestions to him. And he looked at me and he said, and I remember to this day, I could see Coach Mills, rest his soul. He says, DeVries, you're so smart. You coach the distance runners. And I honestly think he expected me to say, no, I don't want to do that. I just wanted to, but what I did rather than that was I gathered up the little mimeograph sheets that I had and I said, can I start tomorrow? And he agreed.
Nice.
And so I began coaching the distance runners when I was a junior in high school, and continued doing that. And in my senior yearbook, in high school, I ran everything, not everything, but oftentimes would run the half mile, the mile, the 2 mile, all in one meet, and then I would run on the 4x4. And one of my teammates, a guy by the name of Jeff Daniels, wrote in my senior yearbook, you're going to make a great coach one day. And I don't know that I've ever lived up to that, but that stuck with me. And I hadn't seen, and here's an interesting side to that. I think it's interesting. I hadn't seen Jeff Daniels since I graduated high school.
Hmm.
But 2 years ago, I got a message that he was coming through Las Vegas on his way to his winter home in Phoenix. He was coming through, and could we meet? And we met. We talked about old times. I reminded him of that. He didn't remember writing that, but I told him, I think that shaped my life. And
Nice.
so my coaching journey really went back to there. And I always wanted to be a coach.
That is awesome. Well, 4 RMAC track and field championships, a couple of NCAA top 3 finishes track and field wise. We're in cross country season right now. The men at the RMAC tournament last week, 11th, and actually the women were 11th. The men finished 12th. Talk a little bit about the RMAC meet, because I know you hold that very dear.
I do. I tell people all the time, I grew up in the RMAC as a coach, really. Although I've been coaching for years, I mean, my experience in college, I competed in the RMAC. And so to me, the RMAC, it's the premier cross-country championship in the country. It's almost as tough as the national meet. And it really means a lot to me. Our performance this weekend, I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. I wanted to be in the top 10 on both sides. There were some reasons. We had one girl who didn't really run very well compared to what we thought. We held out our number 2 man. But so we would have moved up a little bit in those. I think we would have been in the top 10 in both. But the RMAC has also, there's 13 between the men and women nationally ranked teams in the RMAC. And again, if you make all RMAC, there's a pretty darn good chance you're going to be All-American. Typically they take the top 40 make coaches All-American. And typically there's anywhere from 15 to 20 athletes from the RMAC that make All-American. So it's a very, very tough meet. You're right, Scott. I hold it very, very dear. I tell my athletes we're going to battle with the best in the country, and let's get ready to do it.
So, in terms of where you wanted to be in this year's team, where do you feel that your team is right now?
Yeah, we're not as, so our women, let me start with our women. Our women, we've struggled over the last few years in the distance area. I don't spend a lot of resources on the distance side because of the conference. I could have 5 school record holders, and we'd still finish 6th or 7th. And so we focus a lot of our budget, our scholarship budget, on where we can really have an impact. But this year, I was able to pick up a young lady from Kenya who's really tough. I have a girl, Summer Abeta, who broke all our freshman records last year, and 2 New Mexico freshmen, Taylor Begay from Shiprock and Haley Renteria from Espanola, who have just really exceeded my expectations and have really made an impact in their first year here and are doing extremely well. So I'm very, very pleased with their progress, and we're better. We're much better in the women's side than we've been, and that's encouraging to me. I'm a distance coach at heart. I love cross country. I would say I love cross country and I tolerate track and field. Don't tell my track athletes.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, when we see them at the concession stands at the events,
when you see them,
them.
yeah. So on the men's side, I'll be honest. I thought our men were in shape coming into the year to make a run at nationals. That's not going to happen. I don't. It doesn't seem likely. Our number 2 man has been struggling with an injury. I think he's going to run well at regionals. But the guy who we anticipate to be our number 3 has not developed as strong as I hoped. But our 3 New Mexico freshmen have done really well. Xavier Martinez from Rio Rancho has had an outstanding season. He actually won our home meet, and was top 45 at RMAC, which is a big accomplishment. We had Andrew Moore, who graduated a few years ago, was number 5 in the nation in his senior year. When he was a freshman, he didn't finish as high as Xavier in the RMAC. And Andy came up to me after that race and said, one of these days I'm going to win one of these. And he eventually did. He eventually did become an RMAC champion. So Xavier has started out his freshman year in front of where Andy was. So I think that portends pretty well for his future. Our number 1 man, Weldon Chibon, was an All-American last year, and I think Will has a very good shot to improve on his performance. And, I would anticipate him fighting for an All-American spot, fighting for a top 10 spot at Nationals, to be honest.
And he is Bob DeVries. One more segment coming up here. This is the Steve Davis Show. Scott Coletti filling in for Steve Davis.
TurboThreads is a proud sponsor of ProView Networks.
Almost 30 years of experience means fast service, great prices, and a wide selection of apparel from t-shirts to performance sports shirts, even jackets and hats. They feature low minimums and no setup charges on most orders. TurboThreads is located at 1503 Golf Course Road in Rio Rancho, or find them on Facebook, online at turbothreads.com, or call 999-1234 for TurboThreads.
Rudy's is a proud supporter of ProView Networks.
And we are back here on the Steve Davis Show. I'm Scott Coletti, filling in for Steve Davis, talking New Mexico Highlands athletics and cross country at New Mexico Highlands, as well as track and field. We've got Bob DeVries, the head cross country coach and track and field coach for both men and women. And Coach, during the break, you were talking a little bit about your course management skills.
Yeah, well, the national championship is in Kenosha, Wisconsin Parkside, and it's on the Wayne Donnell National Cross Country Course. And Wayne Donnell was the athletic director at Wisconsin Parkside, but he lived in the small farming town, Bristol, where I lived, and I was friends with the family. And Wayne had a vision of building a cross-country course that could host really big meets. And he gave me a job when I was a junior in high school. And my job, along with other people that he paid and some volunteers, we built the Wayne Donnell National Cross Country Course.
Nice.
There was a big forested area out southwest of the campus. And I mean, I was out there 16 years old with a chainsaw. I'm sure OSHA would have shut us down if they were around back then. Definitely not the safest work crew, but we went out, we cut trees, we planted grass, we moved logs, and so I'm anxious to try to get back to Kenosha. My sisters both live about 5 miles on either side of the course to this day, and so it would be kind of a nice homecoming to get back out there.
While we have time, Coach, let's talk a little bit about your track and field team. You've got a lot of track and field athletes who are returning, and we see them all the time at the concession stands. They do a lot of work around the university, which is what's cool about New Mexico Highlands. You get to meet the track and field and every athlete because they're doing something around the school.
Yeah, we're excited about the coming track season. We have pretty much everybody back. And we picked up some really outstanding recruits, both international and New Mexico. We signed 16 New Mexico athletes. We signed young ladies that I think we figured out the other day they had combined for 14 state championships from Fort Sumner and Tucumcari, West Las Vegas, Sandia. Very excited to see what we can do in track and field. And and try to get back and get back in the top 10 at nationals again, and bring home some more All-Americans. So that's.
Touch on some of the seniors that you look at for leadership.
Well, really only got one senior, and that's Patrice Clark. She's an All-American hurdler. She's been on our 4x1. She was our anchor on our 4x1 that broke the national record last year. She's back. She's looking very strong. And then we've got Ashley Barrett, who's been a multiple-time RMAC champion. Rodrika Campbell, who's been a multiple-time RMAC jumps champion. And we picked up, like I said, Leilani Clark from Sandia, who was on all the state championship relay teams. She's fighting to get her spot. You know, it's tough when you're a freshman and you've got a team that broke the national record. It's tough to find a spot, but she's really working hard. They're all working hard. My assistant coach, Damia Russell, takes care of most of that for me when I'm busy with cross, and he works them hard. And I'm looking forward to we get started indoor in December, second weekend of December up at Gunnison, and we'll see how we've done for the fall.
So we got about 30 seconds left, Coach. What's coming up next cross country wise?
So just regionals. You know, we have regionals in Pueblo, Colorado. A very deceptively tough course. I think we're going to do well. We went there and ran. We know the course. I think we're going to be mentally better prepared. That's on me. But yeah, looking forward to racing well at regionals, November 7th, 8th. I think it's Saturday's the 8th in Pueblo.
Well, Coach, I want to thank you so much for introducing to many that may not know about your program to your program.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I know there's a lot of people out there that maybe peripherally know New Mexico Highlands, but don't really know that much about it. And you know, it's good to have you give us this opportunity.
Thanks again to head coach Bob DeVries, track and field, cross country, our guest here on the Steve Davis Show. For Old and Iowani, I'm Scott Glutti, who's been filling in, saying, have a good week. This has been the Steve Davis Show.